Ooh, that looks tasty.
Welcome folks, The Hungry Gamer is back with another mini preview, and today we are talking about Warline! Now, this is one that's already live on Kickstarter, and the reason that my video is coming out late is because I actually had never even played this game until 2 days before the launch, and I was lucky enough to get to do a digital playthrough with the designer, and you can find a link to that down in the description. And we played through 3 games, 2 of them were recorded, and the entire purpose of us getting together was so he would have this digital playthrough. But I liked the game. I liked it enough that I decided I want to do a mini preview here. So what Warline is it is a tactical combat game where each player is taking on the role of a different faction, and there's a potential of 4 different factions that you can get in the game, and they all play very, very, very differently. And each faction has a series of dice, and these dice represent their different battalions, and you can have it set as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and each of those is going to have a different amounts of movement that they can do. Magic is what lets you move and turn and do all kinds of stuff, and different abilities that they have available. And the lower the number, the easier they are to kill, but the more stuff they can do, as in, well, the more magic that they have, so the more things they can do on their turn. The higher the number, the less magic they have, so the less things they can do, but they have more abilities, potentially more powerful abilities, and they're harder to kill. And what's going to happen is at the beginning of each round, and what's going to happen is at the beginning of each game, each player is going to get to put out terrain on the other player's side of the board. Terrain does different things, I'm not going to get into that, but needless to say, there's a terrain that is good for each of the different factions that they get a special benefit on, or whatever it may be. And then you're going to jump right into the game, and each player is going to be able to have a series of cards that they have in their hand that they're going to be able to play, which might be a combat bonus, it might be a special one-off thing that they're able to do, but for the most part, they're going to move 2 of their battalions, move them around the board. When you run into each other, you're going to look at the numbers on the dice, and the difference in the 2 numbers is how much damage you do to the defender. The defender is always going to take the damage. Of course, you're going to be able to play cards, which are going to boost those numbers, but that's pretty much it. Then when a die hits 0, it is killed, and it goes to the graveyard. If you ever fill up the graveyard on your side with your opponent's corpses, I guess, then congratulations, you win. You can also drive them off the board. If you drive them off the board, you will capture them, and you get to kind of punch them in the face a little bit to weaken them. But they go on to another side of your board. If you ever fill up those 3 slots, you win. However, they can also pull them back out of prison, and then they get them back on the board, so it's a little more complicated there. And then there's also some strongholds out there where if you destroy both of those, you got it, you win. And that's pretty much how this game works. So what do I like about this game? So the first thing I like about it is so fast. So in the video that I have, yes, and I edited out some thinking pauses, but I will say that we played 2 full games, had me disconnect and have to take 5-10 minutes to get well, probably closer to 5 minutes, get myself reconnected, get everything reset, me having not played for the most part before. And as I said, on TTS, which is much slower, we played 2 whole games in under an hour, which is really, really fast, because that tells me in meat space, this is a game that when you know what you're doing, you might be playing a game in 15-20 minutes, which is just really, really great. I love that. I also like how the factions are so very different, because in many ways, this reminds me of a game that I've talked about before that I really like, Dice Command. I thought Dice Command is fantastic, one of my favorite head-to-head 2-player games. In many ways, these are living in the same space, and not just because you're using dice as troops, you're running into the difference of the numbers and blah, 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 blah. Not just because of that, but it has a lot of the same strategic play to it, and I really like that. However, what Warline's doing is Warline is taking it one step up as far as the weight of rules and the crunch and the grit. And that's not saying one's better than the other, but it's one step more. It has serious faction differences. And along with that, it has some very cool effects as you have the terrain and the different abilities that each of the different battalion numbers has. They're wildly different, and it makes each of the factions play insanely differently, which I really think is what this type of game needs. So what are my quibbles with the game? Well, the first one is I do think that there is a bit of skill to this game. And that, that's not necessarily bad, but just something to keep in mind that someone who's played a lot is probably going to win more than someone who hasn't. Now, in the video I did, I actually happened to win both games. I'm not convinced he was playing his hardest, but I've also played a lot of dice command. And as I said, it kind of lives in the same world there, the strategies. But overall, I do think someone that's played this game a lot is going to have an advantage. So there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve there. I also think that the way the 4 different factions work is going to take a little bit of time for you to really understand what is going on. Because the first time you face another faction, you're going to be surprised with what it's doing. The first time you try to play another faction, you're not going to necessarily know what it is that you're doing. And so there is a little bit of a ramp up, I think, likely in this game. And along with it, I think the setting of the board at the beginning of the game with the different, putting the different tiles out, that's its own little mini game. And it's going to take time for you to figure out what on earth you're doing with that. Because I know when I played against Justin, he was making strategic decisions. I was like, this looks pretty. I'll put that there and that there and that there. You know, I don't know what I'm doing. But there is strategy there that is going to have to be learned and gleaned, which kind of belies the speed of this game. And then the last thing that I'll throw out is something to keep in mind is that there is the luck of the draw when you're getting your cards. Because you get to pick one card and then you randomly, well, not randomly, you take the top one off the deck. And while it didn't happen to me, I can certainly see there being times where you feel like you just can't get something useful. Now, I think the cards in there are pretty darn cool, but there were definitely times, and again, I played this 3 times, 2 recorded, 1 right before that. There were a few times that I got a card, I'm like, I'm never going to use this. I don't even understand how this card is good. Now, it probably is good, I just hadn't figured it out yet, but those moments can happen. And so if you're someone who gets really frustrated with things like that, well, just something to keep in mind. But there you have it, folks. That is Warline. I gotta say, I was really pleasantly surprised by this game. I think it is a fun head-to-head, though I guess you can actually play with up to 4 players, but a fun strategic combat game that just, it plays quickly. The faction difference is really fun, and it's one that I think is really going to have more staying power than I initially thought that it would when I first got a glimpse at the rules and kind of what was going on with it. But there you have it, folks. That is Warline. Again, as a reminder, I've literally played this game 3 times on TTS, so please take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. But as always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.